Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Can you hear me? Thank you all so much for taking the time to be here tonight. My name is Scott LaFlamme. I'm Yarmouth's town manager, and you're not going to hear from me very much tonight. This is really about hearing from the Army Corps of Engineers. For the last 3 years or so, and far beyond that, earlier than that, the town's been working collaboratively with the Army Corps to review possible improvements to the Royal River to improve fish habitat and the ecosystem of the entire riverway. Again, this is sort of a hotly anticipated meeting by, obviously. It's like a dam meeting or a town meeting. It's hard to tell, but thank you all for being here. It's a great turnout. Just a couple of housekeeping items. The restrooms, if you need to use them, through the back doors to your right-hand side. Thank you, Dave. I also wanted to just quickly, if you didn't sign in with the sign-in sheet, try to do that at some point tonight. If you put your email address down, we'll make sure to send you with some regular updates. Also, if you have questions that you have sort of teed up already, just put a little asterisk next to your name. We'll try to get to them, as many questions as we can tonight. I also want to just quickly thank and acknowledge Patriot Insurance for the use of this incredible space. We don't have big enough spaces for some of these public events, and we're so pleased that they were able to host us tonight. So with that, I'm going to welcome Janet Cody up to the mic. Janet's been our project manager. We've worked closely with her over the duration of the project thus far, and she'll be able to sort of review the draft report, the items within the tentatively selected plan. You'll learn more about that in just a moment, and then she'll introduce her team. So thank you.
Good evening, everybody. You can hear me? Yes? Good. All right. Well, first off, before I get started with my presentation, I just wanted to thank you all. We've had just an amazing opportunity to look at your river and study it, to come up with ideas on how to improve the environment and the ecosystem and the fish population. So I just want to say thank you. It's an amazing body of water, so thank you for allowing us to come and take a look at it. And without further ado, we'll hop into the slides. So next slide, please. So just some rules of the road. So we're going to give a presentation this evening, and then we're going to open it up to your questions, just like Scott mentioned. Please hold your questions until the end, and we'll try to get to as many as we possibly can. When you do, could you please state your name, and if you're affiliated with any business or organization, we'd really appreciate that. We want to make sure we capture it accurately. Next slide, please. Okay, so when we receive your comments, either verbally or through the comment process, written comments, those are all going to be part of the study. They'll be captured in the report. We'll do our best tonight to address any questions you have, but we might not be able to because we don't have all of our team with us. If we aren't able to answer them, we'll try to get back to you. Also know that a lot of the questions you might be asking will be in the draft report. And then, again, this meeting will be recorded, so that we'll have a recording of everything that takes place this evening, and so we have your comments and questions too. Next slide. We just ask that everybody be respectful to everybody that's here in the meeting. I know this is a very passionate topic, so I'm just going to ask you to avoid disrespectful comments, either in the chat if you're online or if you're asking questions. Also, if you're online, can you turn your cameras off so we can save bandwidth? And then, if you're online, turn off your microphones, make sure they're muted, and maybe if you have your cell phone with you, maybe make sure that's off too, or turn off the ringer. Okay, next slide. So we have a pretty decent sized team. Some of us are here today, others are online, and some just couldn't make it at all. So I want to introduce the people that are here today. We have TJ Atwell, who is from our Public Affairs Office, that will be acting as moderator during the question and answer session. And then you know me, I'm the project manager and the planner. We also have Donnie Flanagan. He is the environmental resource specialist. He took a look at the fish populations in the Royal River. Also, we have Bill Marr, who is our realty specialist. We have Matthew Fleming, who is an engineer, and he specializes in geotech. We have And those are the folks that are with us today at the front. Oh, and Mark, I'm sorry. Mark Paiva, how can I forget you? He's the archaeologist. He studied the cultural resources and archaeological resources along the river. Then online, we have Paul Morelli, who specializes in GIS and mapping. We have Mike, and I'm going to mess your name up, I'm sorry, Andriuk. He is a structural engineer. Kevin Hebert, he might not be online tonight because he just, I believe he is just had his first baby, so that's exciting. Jenny Palacio is our economist. Chris Tilley is our cost engineer, and then Tom Milbachler, you probably know him from some previous meetings we had with you. He's an engineer that did the H&H modeling. Next slide. So tonight we have a couple of goals. We'd like to go over the continuing authorities process again, just so you make sure you understand the process of getting a project from start to finish. We're going to provide an update on the Royal River project specifically. We're going to describe how we reached the tentatively selected plan. We're going to talk about the environmental impacts of that plan. And then we're going to provide you information about the public review so you'll know how to provide comments to us. And that's just a quick overview of the topics that we're going to cover, so I won't go into that. You'll see it when we get there. So next slide. Okay, Continuing Authorities program. This is the authority that allows the Corps of Engineers to study your river. So we're under Section 206, which is specifically for aquatic ecosystem restoration projects. The Continuing Authorities program is for projects that are on the smaller side. Congress gives us buckets of money that allows us to start projects and implement projects without asking Congress for additional authority. And that saves time because we don't have to wait for another bill to come out. We could move from one phase to the other quickly. There are two phases in the CAPS program. The first is the feasibility phase, which we're in right now, and the next is the design and implementation phase. We call it the DI phase. Also, I'll be throwing in some acronyms tonight. I'm going to try not to, but it's like breathing for Corps of Engineers folks. So if I say something that you don't, if I say an acronym that you're like, Janet, what are you saying? Raise your hand and I'll make sure to speak. I'll define it again. So we are about here in the feasibility phase. So we have gone through, we've received a letter of intent from the town of Yarmouth to come and take a look at the project, the problem. We've developed a report that explained the federal interest. Why do we want to spend tax dollars on this project, on this problem? We signed a feasibility cost share agreement. It's just a legal agreement that binds the town and the Corps to cost share on this project. And then we started a feasibility study and started investigating the problem, come up with a solution, write the report, and the environmental assessment. Eventually, we'll move into the design and implementation phase. That's where we're going to finish the design that we've started, and we'll construct it, and eventually it will be turned over. There's no O&M, operations and maintenance here, because if we move forward, we won't be handing over structure for you to manage. Instead, we'll be removing the dams. Next slide. Okay, so in the feasibility phase, our goal is to figure out a solution to a problem. And we start by scoping the problem, determining alternative plans to address the problem, and then evaluating those different alternatives. And then from there, we have to analyze that selected plan and ultimately go through review and approval. And we're all the way down here at the review and approval process. Know that we have to comply with all federal laws. One of the big ones that you'll hear me talk about tonight is the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. And to complete this phase, we have to have a final report that has been approved and signed. So that's what we're working towards, is having that final report signed. Okay, next. All right, steady scoping. Excuse me. Okay, some of the information that I may be sharing with you tonight, you may already know because you live on the river. But just in case there are people that are not as familiar with the Royal River, we're going to start where we started to understand your watershed and your river. So the Royal River watershed is about 141 square miles, and it's mixed use, includes mixed use land. Mostly is rural. The river begins at Sabbath Day Lake, and it flows all the way through Gloucester, down through Yarmouth, North Yarmouth and Yarmouth, and then eventually 26 miles later, it runs into the Casco Bay. Back in the late 1600s, a number of small dams were built on the river. That was to support industry. So grain, paper, textiles, etc. By the late 1950s, there were 8 man-made dams in the river system, in the river and tributaries. One of those dams was removed in 2013. So this is a wonderful graphic. So any of the triangles are the dams that were or are on the river. The area that we're looking at is here in the red circle with the East Elm Street Dam and the Bridge Street Dam. Those 2 dams alone control access for 135 river miles. That includes both the main stem and the tributaries. Next slide. So as you know, the study area is located within both Yarmouth and North Yarmouth. Our study area runs from the head of the river, which is down right about here, and runs all the way up to Baston Park and Route 9. That's about 7 river miles, main stem river miles. It includes the majority of the East Elm Street Dam impoundment. There's only a tiny, small amount of impoundment that our study area does not include. This area includes both man-made and natural barriers. So First Falls is a barrier, but it's not a barrier to fish passage. Middle Falls has been found to be a barrier to fish passage. Those are both natural falls. Man-made structures that are in the study area are Bridge Street and East Elm Street Dam. Next slide, please. So our problem, as we identified it, and with the help of the town, we identified that the current dam and ladder fish ladder configuration at Bridge Street and East Elm Street Dam limited fish passage up the river, up the Royal River. Additionally, the way Middle Falls is configured, it also partially or fully blocks fish passage. So our opportunities in this study were to improve fish passage for migratory fish species and to increase connectivity on the Royal River. Right now, your river is kind of broken up into little sections because of the natural and man-made impediments. Also, we could restore some of the river habitat, and we could restore natural flows and natural temperatures. We could also enhance overall productivity of the ecosystem. If we allow more fish up your river, that's more biomass that the rest of the ecosystem can use. Also, we could restore scenic falls and riffles. We could also increase safety around the dam sites. And finally, we could reduce O&M and replacement costs. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Donnie, and he's going to give you a little more information about the fisheries on the Royal River.
All right. Thank you, Janet. As Janet said, my name is Donnie Fawnin. I am the Environmental Resource Specialist on this project. My background is in fisheries biology and invasive species management. And this has been a great opportunity to get to know your town and the environment you have here. So let's get started on the fish. Okay, next slide, please. So just a brief overview of the fisheries on the Royal River. I want to talk a little bit about the history of the fish in the Royal River, the state of the fishery as we observe it today, and then the proposed impacts, proposed project impacts to fish, as well as the big question, why are we so invested in alewife specifically? I know that's a big question that people have been asking, and I hope to be able to quell your questions for that today. Please, next slide. So going back as far as the 1880s, there were small shad, alewife, and American eel fisheries on the river. As time goes on, it was noted that there was a large Atlantic salmon fishery here as well. But in the late 1800s, early 1900s, salmon were considered extirpated, partially because of the fragmentation of the river and partially because of overfishing. That's unfortunately part of our history, and it's very common all over the place. Starting in 1958, Maine Inland Fisheries and Wildlife did not identify any salmon or other sea-run fish in the Royal River. This is still mostly due to the fragmentation of the river. Getting into the 1970s, there was construction of the fishways at both of the dams to help combat this problem. And then late in the 70s, alewife were stocked in Sabbathdale Lake. I believe there was also a shad stocking at around the same time that was less successful. Next slide, please. And then 1978, we get to, there's the shad stocking we were just talking about. In fall trapping, they were indicated that the juvenile shad were migrating downstream. The issue that we then came across is that the following year, they were not noticed migrating back upstream. In 1981, no adult shad were observed. By 1983, the alewife run had begun to decrease very drastically. 1988, and the alewife run had decreased down into the measure of thousands, rather tens of thousands. And this wasn't a Royal River specific issue. This is across their entire range. Again, partially because of habitat fragmentation, because of industry. All of their historic habitat has also been historically used for industry. And damming it to drive different types of mills was very, very common, and most of them are still extant today. By 2012, the town removal of granite blocks in the bypass channel around Factory Island was made a priority due to a survey by U.S. Fish and Wildlife that suggested it could provide adequate fish passage around Middle Falls. However, there were a few different issues with alewife. Alewife specifically and other river herring are not jumping fish like salmon or sea-run brook trout or brown trout. As little as a 6 to 9 inch hydraulic drop in the river will prevent them from being able to pass. They kind of just sidle up to an obstacle and wiggle on over it instead of jumping up out of the water. So we have to be a little bit more mindful about what the obstacles look like. At this time, they discovered that portions of the previous mill that was on Factory Island that had collapsed into the channel around the island were considered a serious obstacle to any fish using that as a vector for passage around the falls. So I believe that was a volunteer group that went in and did that work, and you can still, we went out to investigate it. You can still see where they pulled the blocks out today. They're sitting right where they were in 2012. And passage has been opened up significantly, but not quite enough. Recently, repair efforts were made to the fish ladders, mostly in the form of regular maintenance, debris removal, that kind of thing to, again, open up their usage to fish passage through the structures. And I do know that U.S. Fish and Wildlife has a volunteer group that does monitor the alewife passage through the fish ladders every year. And while the numbers are not where we want them to be, there are still alewife using these structures. Opposed to the 1988 figure of 6,000, the numbers today are unfortunately measured in the tens to 100-ish at max. And we'd like to get that number back up. Next slide, please. So this is a little examination through Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and our own observations of the various species that have been observed and surveyed in the river. Everything from brook and brown trout, yellow perch, chain pickerel, both species of black bass, several different minnow species, even into sticklebacks, suckers, bullhead, and pumpkin seeds, which really does make up a pretty typical assemblage for a riverine environment in New England at this elevation. So this is good. This is what we wanted to see. There's no invasive fish. The things that are a little more sensitive are still there, like the brook trout and the sticklebacks, suggesting that the habitat, while it may have suffered in recent years, is still viable. Next slide, please. And this is an analysis of the impact on each of those species of our currently selected, tentatively selected plan for dam removal. And as you can see, everything in green will have a positive benefit from the dam removal. Yellow is a minor but manageable impact, and black would be no impact whatsoever. And what you'll see, the two species that are actually listed as showing a minor negative impact, they are both native to warm, slow-moving water, as we can see in the impoundments as they exist today. In the natural state of the river, we really wouldn't see chain pickerel or smallmouth bass. Chain pickerel like to live in swamps where the water is not quick, it's sitting still, they're ambush predators. And largemouth bass will live anywhere that's warm and doesn't have a great deal of flow. Now, they're listed in yellow rather than red, saying this is going to be a significant impact because the changes in the water depth, the water temperature, and the water velocity do not look to show preclusion of their habitation of the river. They will still be able to live in the Royal River, perhaps with a smaller degree of success than they are today, that will then be shared on to the brook trout, the brown trout, the smallmouth bass, which are a much more typical riverine species of black bass. And across the board, minnows, suckers, everything loves alewife, primarily because of something we'll get into on the next slide. Next slide, please. No. So we're going to get into why alewife. And for people who hadn't seen it before, that's an alewife. Also known as one of the river herring species. There's two that are usually found together in most of the rivers where they migrate. It would be alewife and blueback. And I would say 75 out of 80 people will not be able to tell you the difference between the two because they look identical. That being said, through the storied history of fish sampling on the Royal River, blueback herring have not been observed. So we really just focused in on the alewife because they're the ones that are noted to be here and to be still actively using the fish passage structures. So it's a little question about why alewife. And the big answer is they are an anadromous species of fish, which means that they are a saltwater fish that migrates upstream to freshwater to spawn. And as I have my little diagram here of a riverine system, it seems a little reductive, but it bears worth saying that rivers flow one direction. They carry nutrients in the form of protein and eggs and carbohydrates and fats from uphill to downhill into the estuary. And that's pretty much a ubiquitous answer, with the one golden exception of anadromous fish returning from downstream upstream with resources that they have amassed in their own bodies from the marine environment and the estuary and go back upstream to where they want to spawn. And when they do that, they're bringing themselves, they're also laying eggs. Their eggs are going to hatch into juveniles, and every single one of those stages is going to be eaten by something. Everything eats alewife, and that's why everything is in green. Whether they're just minnow species that nobody would pass a second thought about, those minnow species will still eat the eggs of the alewife. Well, is that an issue? Not really. Alewife, typically, one adult alewife will put out somewhere in the range of 250,000 eggs at a time. A lot of those eggs are not going to be viable to begin with, and if they have a 1% survivability, you're still looking at 2,500 fish. That's great. So what they represent is a big annual return on resources that will benefit not just the fish. I talk about fish because that's what I love. That's what I care about. But it benefits all the other predatory species in the ecosystem. It benefits eagles and osprey, raccoons, otters, all of the things that we've observed since we've been up here. Bullfrogs will eat the same eggs and the same fish. So it's a net gain of this nutritional resource that's just been absent from the river for a number of years. Can I have the next slide, please? And then on the human side of things, alewife are a fairly to significantly important economic species. They're used as for a number of things, including eating themselves. I've had smoked alewife myself, and I'm sure that there are people in this room that have as well. Alewife migration festivals are rather popular. And if you haven't had a chance to go find one, I would recommend it. It's a lot of fun. But beyond that, they're also a really popular choice of bait for lobster traps. We all know how much Maine loves our lobsters. So it's something that we really need to see as a commercial fishery for itself, for its own value as food, for its own value as bait, for whatever other reasons. It has a lot of economic interest. But across its range, what we have seen over recent decades, so over the last 70 years or so, you can see the trend here of spike dip. Oh, we're going to do a little bit more maintenance, and then a big decline across the board for alewife fisheries. And that's this particular chart is just for the state of Maine, but the same trend can be seen in Massachusetts and in Connecticut and in Rhode Island and everywhere where there is a commercial alewife fishery. And part of that is due to climate change, but more importantly, it's due to habitat fragmentation and the fishing trends, which are being addressed mostly by the commercial fishing is being addressed by the National Marine Fisheries Service, and habitat fragmentation is being addressed by organizations like us. So they are, hands down, the most extensively distributed anadromous species of fish. And a lot of people, when they hear anadromous, if they even know the word, immediately and only think of salmon. But salmon are just the one that people know because it goes on their plate most frequently across the board. Really, this is a much broader issue, and what we're hoping here is if we can address and even increase those numbers from the hundreds to the tens of thousands, then what we'll see is a big boom of life in the Royal River. Come that as new otter families or even more exceptional sea-run brook trout. I have heard, and I haven't had a chance yet to come up and fish for them, but I've heard that this is an exceptional river for trout fishing, and we hope to make that even better. So, with that, I'll turn it back over to Janet.
Thank you. Okay, next slide, please. To come up with our plan, we first have to do a couple steps before getting to the final plan. The first is we need to come up with a number of measures to address the problem. We had to look at the 3 different sites, the East Elm Street Dam, the Bridge Street Dam, and the Middle Falls, and come up with a series of ways to address the issue. So for measures for each of the dam locations, we looked and considered replacement of the fish ladders. We looked at different designs and layouts. We also considered repairing the fish ladders. We considered both partial and full removal of the dams, and then we also considered modifying the dams, notching them. And then for Middle Falls, there were a different series of measures that we considered. We considered creating a natural fish passage in that side channel around Factory Island. We considered constructing a fish ladder similar to what is located up at the dam sites. We considered modifying that main channel where the cascade is, considered chipping stone out of it. We considered a diversion structure that would move water from the main channel into the side channel, and then we also considered modifying the side channel, again with chipping of stone, removal of stone. Next slide. So the team considered a number of different ways of looking at the measures. We looked at past studies because the Royal River has been studied quite a bit, and there's been a lot of study on how to improve fish passage. So we utilized that data. We also considered constructability. Can we build this? Can we even build it? We thought about cost. Is there a less expensive way of addressing this problem? We also considered, would the measure actually address the objective of the study? So in our analysis at the dam locations, we removed the repairing the fish ladders. And we also removed modifying and notching the dams. So what we had left were replacement of the fish ladders and removal, either partially or fully removing the dams. And then at Middle Falls, using those criteria, we removed creating a natural fish passage at the side channel, constructing a fish ladder, and then modifying that main channel. So what we had left was creating a diversion structure and then modifying the side channel. Next slide. So using those measures that still remained, we developed alternative plans. So we would have one action at East Elm Street, one action at Bridge Street, and one action at Middle Falls. And the NEPA that I mentioned, the National Environmental Policy Act, requires us to also study a no-action plan. What would happen to the river if we did nothing? So we came up with 8 different plans using those measures. So for example, Plan 2 would be removing the fish ladder in the dam at East Elm Street Dam, at Bridge Street, again removing the dam, and then at Middle Falls would be building a diversion structure. Whereas 17 would be replacing fish ladder at the East Elm Street Dam, no action at the Bridge Street Dam, no action at the Middle Falls. So then we compared all of those plans to each other. Next slide. Oh, okay, next slide. Surprised myself there. Okay, so we developed costs and benefits for every one of those plans. And as Donnie said, we focused on fish passage impacts. That was our benefit. And then we developed costs for each one of the plans. And then we assessed cost effectiveness and efficiency for each plan, compared them to each other. Next slide. And our tentatively selected plan was the most effective and most efficient to address the problem. So the tentatively selected plan includes fully removing the dam at Bridge Street and removing the entire fish ladder. At East Elm Street Dam, we would remove the entire fish ladder and only part of the dam. That would be the dam that constrains the main channel. The side of the dam that is towards the north or the left descending bank would remain in place. And then at Middle Falls, we would construct a diversion structure that would allow more water to move through that side channel. And then through our adaptive management plan, we would come back and assess to see how much water, if enough water is being moved into that side channel to allow the fish passage. If not, then we would come back and we would do additional measures in that side channel, possibly rock chipping, modifying that channel to allow the fish up. Okay, next slide. So currently, this is our working cost estimate. It's $5.7 million. There is a cost share to this. The federal government our cost share is 65%, whereas the non-federal share, the town of Yarmouth, it would be 35% of the cost of design and implementation. Next slide. So in addition to improving fish passage, we also believe that there will be other benefits, that we will restore natural cascades, we will improve connectivity. There'll be benefits not just to alewives, but to other fish species. We will eliminate the need for spending millions of dollars of operation and maintenance, repair and replacement of the dams and the fish ladders. And then we will also improve safety and reduce liability around the dam sites. Next slide. Okay. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about our sampling that we did in our analysis. So to the National Environmental Policy Act requires that we assess the impact of this project if we implement it, so that you, the public, understand what impacts, both good and bad, will happen to the environment, the resources. So to be able to address that question, how will this project affect the environment, we did a number of studies and analyses that I wanted to just mention. The first has to do with sediment, and the sediment behind the dams, sediment in the river system. We collected samples in October of last year to look at what's in them, what chemicals are in them. Previous studies had identified some contaminants, and we wanted to see what was there and improve that data set so that you guys would have an understanding of what is in your sediment. And then we also had, we have a research branch of the Army Corps of Engineers, and we had one of their representatives come and look at the river as well. He was focusing on sediment movement in the East Elm Street Dam impoundment. And then finally, last year in December, the town hired a contractor to look at the amount of sediment behind the dams. So we understand how much would be moving downstream, or if we would have to remove that sediment before we remove the dams, because we didn't want a large slug of material moving downstream. So what we found through all these studies was, first, we found that the riverbed is really scoured. There isn't a lot of fine sediment. It is mostly bedrock or coarse substrate. There are areas of fine sediment, but they're mostly located right along the banks. So that was very interesting. We weren't expecting that. So we also found that the sediment behind the dams and moving through the system is very mobile. It's not sitting somewhere. It's moving, as it moves into the river system, it's moving downstream. It's not getting caught anywhere. It's moving straight into the bay. So that was interesting as well. A previous study done by Stantec found some mercury contamination. So we went back to that site to see if it was still there, and it wasn't. So we found some contamination of PAHs, polyaromatic, oh good God, hydrocarbons, sorry guys. Anyway, we found that, and we believe that's from runoff. So what Stantec found, we found as well. But we found that the sediment is relatively, contamination is relatively low. So your sediments pose a minimal risk to the marine environment and to the freshwater environment as well. So that was surprising. That was a nice find. So next, and if you wanted to read more about that, we did a presentation last spring that's online, so you can see all the details, and also in the in the report, both reports on those two of those study efforts are there. We're still waiting for the ERDIC, the study that was done upstream of the East Elm Street Dam. So another thing we did was we looked at the H&H hydraulic and hydrology modeling. We really spent a lot of time on this because we wanted to understand if we did anything, if we removed the dams, if we changed your river in any way, how would that affect the river? What is it going to look like afterwards? So to understand this, we're moving from the mouth of the river in the estuary all the way up to the end of the impoundment, Route 9 here. So 0 is sea level. So your axis here is showing you the elevation. Our green line is showing you the bottom of the river. So you notice there are steep elevation changes at the falls, okay? So, and then we also have identified some of the bigger, more important sites along the river. So Route 1, Bridge Street, et cetera. Now your light blue color, that's the existing condition. That's at median flow. So basically anytime you look at the river and it's the level of the river that you would see the majority of the time. It's about 120 cubic feet per second. So it's basically the normal, I guess you would say, condition of the river. So you see that all the way along. Now, if we implemented this tentatively selected plan, you notice at the Bridge Street Dam, there'll be a drop of about 4 feet. And then when you hit the middle falls, there'll be no difference, no change at all. Also down, sorry, I should have started here. At the mouth of the river, no change in elevation. Okay, so we're gonna move up the river to the East Elm Street Dam. Again, you're gonna see about a 4-foot drop in river height, but that change is going to get smaller as you get towards the upper impoundment, the upper end of the impoundment. Next slide. We also looked at velocity too. Will the river get faster? Will it get slower? So again, the light blue is the existing condition, the median river speed, and the bright blue is the change. So you'll notice some parts near the, through the falls. So this would be First Falls, Bridge Street. You're gonna see some increase in water velocity between Bridge Street and East Elm Street Dam. As you would expect, it's gonna be more like a running river through past the dam sites. And then in the impoundment, it will be a little bit faster, and there will be sites that will increase in velocity. Well, what we found was that in the East Elm Street impoundment, there will be a few sites that will become much more shallow and this will speed up. Okay, next slide. So I wanted to show you this so that when you read the Maine report, you understand, you'll see be able to really understand the images. So we put together side-by-side images of the existing condition and the condition we expect at medium height, river height, if the tentatively selected plan is implemented. So you'll see that this one is showing you water depth. So in the existing condition, you see that the river comes to the Bridge Street Dam. It's spread out throughout the channel, and then runs past over the dam, over the Cascades, and then down. What the modeling is not as good, will not show you very well, is water running over rock. So that's why it looks like puddles, but it's not really, it's just water moving over rock. So with this tentatively selected plan, we believe the river's going to get narrower and the channel is going to move more towards the center. Now you'll also see these yellow lines in the images in the report. Those images are they're at the same exact place in both images, and it's showing you its reference to this profile. So what it's going to show you is the light blue shows you the existing condition, and the bright blue shows you the tentatively selected plan. So in this site, at this cross section, we don't believe the river level is going to change at all. And we have side-by-sides for the entire river from Bridge Street all the way up to Baston Park. So you'll be able to see the differences. Next slide. Now we also did a climate change analysis. In the Corps of Engineers, we're required to do this for every one of our projects. So mostly it's if we have a larger project, will it impact the climate? And will the climate impact the river? Impact the project. So what we found was the project will not impact climate change at all, but climate change will probably impact the fish species that we were looking at and considering. We believe that temperature will rise this century, and that the warmer years means that we will see earlier end of the egg laying season. We expect that peak spring flows are going to be earlier because we're going to have the snow melt earlier. And then we still expect to see sea level rise as well. There's an entire analysis in the Maine report, so you can read that too if you're interested. Next slide. Okay, so with all that investigation, this is what we believe the impacts to the environment are going to be. Next slide. We found that we do not believe that there will be any significant negative long-term effects, but there will be, we believe that there will be quite a few positive benefits, positive impacts. Also, when I say short-term, generally what I mean is during the period of construction. So basically when we're actually removing the dams. So when we're constructing or the big equipment is out there working, excuse me, that's when we see the impact. As soon as that's done, then the impact will probably go away. So for recreation, we believe that there are going to be positive impacts for fishing because we'll have more fish. A lot of people like boating and swimming and ice skating on the impoundment above East Elm Street. We still believe that's going to be able to take place because there is a bedrock prominence that's going to become exposed, and it will basically the river will maintain large enough width and depth so that you still can paddle, that you can still swim. It will just be narrower and it will be shallower. Aesthetics, we're going to change the aesthetics, and it's pretty much subjective depending on the person who looks at it. So some people like historic dams, then it will be considered a negative impact, but if you like free-flowing rivers, it'll be a positive impact. Air quality and greenhouse gases will only be affected during construction because the equipment will release greenhouse gases into the environment. Water quality, during construction, we believe there will be short-term negative impacts. So as we move the rocks out of the river, it will become more cloudier, so turbidity will increase, but we believe there will be small long-term impact, positive impacts with dissolved oxygen. H&H, okay, so we don't believe the project will affect the floodplain as a whole, and we believe that will be long-term positive impacts to wetlands. Cultural resources, this is going to be considered a negative impact because we will be removing historic structures. For fisheries, long-term positive impacts. For wildlife, they're going to be scared away from the area for a little while, so that's going to be negative. But yet, in the end, once we stop the construction, there will be positive impacts because we'll have more fish, more productivity, more food for the wildlife. There are no threatened and endangered species in the area, so no impact there. Vegetation, it will be short-term impacts because we'll modify the banks, so we will have to disrupt the vegetation there. Noise will be short-term. There is no hazardous material, hazardous, toxic, or radioactive waste in the area, so no impact. No impact to socioeconomics or transportation or infrastructure. And for the safety concerns, we found that safety will change. Safety concerns will change. You won't be as worried about people climbing on the dams. Instead, it's more of people learning that the river is shallower and narrower so that they would have to adjust. So if people jump off bridges or what have you, you'd have to think about that. Next slide. Okay, so historic resources. Just want to note that, as I mentioned, there are impacts to the historic properties, the bridges, the dams. And we are working right now with the Maine SHPO, State Historic Preservation Officer. And we are developing a programmatic agreement with them so that we can go in and continue to work on this, work on assessing impacts to archaeological resources when we move into the next phase. Next slide. Okay, public review. So public review will last for 30 days. We'll start tomorrow and we'll run to November. And we will have a number of different documents out there for you to read and assess. The main document includes the main report and the EA. They're actually they're the same document, they're integrated. And then there will be a number of technical appendices. They will be available online, or hard copies will be available at the library and town hall. And you guys, when you have comments or questions, you can provide them either by email or by normal mail through the U.S. Postal Service. And anything that is sent to us will be part of the public record. Next slide. So to find the documents, if you want them online, we have a website, and I believe there's a link on the town's website to get to our website. And then this is the information you need if you want to send us mail or email. Next slide. And then what comes next? What happens after we get done with this, this public review period? So we're almost at the end. We're really close. So what we're going to do is we're going to address comments that we receive. Know that this report is actually going through a series of other reviews while you're doing your review. So we're going to be addressing all the comments that we have received. We have a few more pieces of analysis that we've got to complete. And then we'll finalize the report study, the report in the EA. We will submit it to our division. That's the level that's a higher level that has to give us approval to move forward. And once we receive their approval, we'll sign the report, and that will be the end of the feasibility phase. And that's when we move into the DI phase. So we will be here, and when we moving into the DI phase, where our first step would be to sign a project partnership agreement with the town. And again, that is a legal agreement that assigns cost share to move forward into finishing the design, starting construction. And if there was O&M, which there won't be in this case, it would move into O&M. Next slide. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. So I'm going to turn this over to TJ, and he is going to moderate the questions. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Orenstein. I'm one of the town councilors. I've been working with Scott LaFlemme, working with the Army Corps on this project. And I just wanted to say a couple things before we start the public comment period. And that is that the town council has not prejudged what's going to happen. The Army Corps has made a recommendation. We're learning more about it through this presentation and through the report that we can start seeing tomorrow. But your comments are going to be very important to how the town views this issue and how we react to it as a community. So I'm going to turn over to TJ, but I'll be walking around with a microphone so that anybody who has a comment can participate. Please remember to say your name, and if you're speaking on behalf of an organization, please say so.
Good evening, everyone. I'm TJ Atwell, and I'll be your moderator. I'm one of the few people up here who isn't a scientist tonight. So really, I'm armed with my wristwatch or my phone, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that everybody gets a chance to be heard tonight, because we're going to turn it over for questions and comments. We have to give the insurance center back over at 8. We only have the room that long. And I've got a list full of people who, as they came in the door, signed up to make some comments. There's some stars down here. I'm going to go through them in order. And then I'm going to turn it over to the online audience, and if we still have folks with questions and comments, we'll transition back. Because there's about 170 or so of us between online and in person, I'm going to limit the comment or the question time that you have to 2 minutes, okay? And it's simply to be able to get that out. I've done this a few times, and 2 minutes doesn't sound long, but it's actually a long time to ask a question. We will do our best to give you an answer. We can't always answer everything, and some things aren't questions. If it's a comment, we'll say thank you for your comment, and then we'll move on. If it's a question, we'll do our best. That's what we brought everyone out here for. So I'm already breaking a rule that I haven't told you about, which is we have an online audience who can only hear what goes into the wireless microphones. So for the benefit of those people online, please be patient and try to wait for a wireless mic to come to you before you ask your question, and we'll try to get it up here to answer it quickly. And I think that's it. Please please do your best not to go over anyone's time. I'm not law enforcement. I don't have a giant cane to get you off the exit stage right. I'm going to put my hand up if you're at 2 minutes, and everyone else is just going to see my hand up, and they're going to know that you're taking their time. It's really all that I've got. All right. So that being said, I'm going to cut it over to questions. Please keep in mind 2 minutes. I'll do my best to put my hand up in the air when we reach it. I'm taking time on my cell phone. and I'll start when you begin. That being said, and if you didn't get a star up here and you're wondering who put a star next to my name, why didn't I get one, I didn't know about it, we'll get to your comment after we get through the folks who have the stars. We'll do our best. So the first person up here with a star, and this is handwritten. Handwritten, folks, I'm going to do my best. Bob Nasdor. Yes.
Thank you. I'm Bob Nasdor. I'm with American Whitewater. We're a national organization that works to restore rivers and remove dams for benefit aquatics as well as recreation. 2 questions for you tonight. I watched the presentation and I didn't see the word whitewater used, and that concerned me. The stretch where the dams are located, the falls are located, is an important whitewater boating resource. I'm here tonight with several people with the Penobscot Paddlers and Chowder Society who've boated frequently in this area. My first question is, what sort of recreational boating considerations were made during the design phase, specifically as it relates to the existing use of whitewater boating? We've prepared a paper on recreational boating considerations in the design of in-stream channel modifications, which I'm more than happy to share with you. We're very excited that these dams are going to be removed, but we want to make sure it's done in a way which enhances rather than prohibits further recreation, which we believe is an asset to the community here. In particular, the modification of structures could in fact create additional hazards for whitewater boaters if not done correctly. So that's my first question.
Awesome. Hold on. Seeing who's online too from the team.
So much of our consideration was on flat water paddling to ensure that you could still paddle the upstream impoundment. The concern that was brought to us was that if the water is drawn down too far, that people would not be able to paddle whitewater or flat water. With regards to whitewater, we are considering removing the dams down to the bedrock. So we had not considered actually changing the bedrock. Once we removed the structures, we had not considered changing the bedrock in any way to accommodate other forms of recreation. So, I mean, hopefully that answers your question. Oh.
Not really. It doesn't seem like whitewater boating was a consideration. So I'll provide written comments, but it is a concern. My second question is, the removal of these dams will result in the discharge into a navigable water of sediment, for example. Will a permit be required under Section 401 of the Clean Water Act from Maine DEP that includes the protection of designated and existing uses, including whitewater boating?
Yes, that is something that we will be applying for during the design phase once we have a more specific design criteria of the actual diversion structure and the dam removal. It's absolutely on our radar and something that is a very high priority for us.
Thank you for keeping that second question short. I would ask that folks just stick to one question. We'll get back around to you if you have a second question. We are trying to get to as many people as we can tonight. I actually missed the first person. The star was on the other side. Robert Greenleaf?
Thank you. My name is Rob Greenleaf. I'm a resident of Yarmouth. I'm also the board president of the Royal River Conservation Trust. As an organization, we've dedicated to protection of and restoration of the natural resources that's in our watershed. The trust stands firmly for the restoration of the Royal River as it could run free and stream, and the removal of both the dams if possible. We offer our support to the town and others that are working to thoughtfully deliberate and reach these goals. Just a comment. Thank you.
Len Camino?
I'll try to keep it brief. I'm Len Camino. I'm a North Yarmouth resident, the poor cousin of Yarmouth, and I live on the river. And I'm concerned because I have listened to the presentations before, and they said they really haven't looked upriver beyond proximate to the East Elm Street Dam. And I am worried about drawing that down. There's a lot of muck on that river up in North Yarmouth, and I wonder what's going to happen to the silt there and whether it's going to be looked at, and if there's toxins, who's going to abate that upriver. The other thing is I have a drawn well, and is the water table going to be affected? And if I need a new well, who's going to pay for that? And the other thing is I'm probably live right where the water is going to get faster. And I'm kind of worried, is the river going to dry up? I'm further concerned that, I don't know if anybody's ever seen the river flood in North Yarmouth. It's pretty torrential. If you draw down the water, are the riverbanks going to be prone to erosion? And it said the floodplain isn't going to change. I would think it would change for the better. So those are just some of the concerns I have. I know there's some other people from North Yarmouth who want to talk about the water, so I'll leave it. Is that right?
So there's a lot of questions. We will, hopefully everyone will remember them all. Why don't we start with, will it affect your well? Did you want to take that? Yeah, we don't believe that implementing the plan will affect people's wells. Question about North Yarmouth. The modeling stopped at Route 9. As you notice, that's where the impact of the removal of the dams is going to basically ease off. There eventually, when you get to that point up near Baston Park, our modeling suggests that is where that's the end of the impact. So you're not going to see reduction north of that area. That's what our modeling is suggesting. Our H&H person was not able to be here, so I'm doing the best I can for him. But if you present that question, that would be great, because he would be able to go into it more. The question about there's a lot of muck up there. We don't believe that in North Yarmouth, north of Baston Park, that this project will impact the material that is in the river channel above our modeling. Your question about erosion, did you want to take that, or do you want?
Yeah, so as Janet just started with the erosion issue that far upstream, what we've really seen out of Royal River from our sediment sampling is it's a very high energy system, which means basically anytime you get a big storm, it flushes the sediment out and then redeposits. That's also a big reason why we didn't see contamination as we kept going back. It isn't a permanent set state there. And that's mostly because it's a lot of bedrock. So what we're expecting to see is much of the same. As even after the dams are removed, we are expecting to see that when you see a big storm event, you'll see some flushing and then redeposition over time, just as it's always been.
Additionally, with regard to your question about erosion of the riverbank, part of the adaptive management plan that's part of the report includes seeding of the banks to reduce erosion and also to reduce the potential for invasive species to colonize those exposed banks.
Okay, so I'm going to tell our panelists that I've been told that those microphones do work, and so if you can use those, is that right, Sean? I won't have to run around quite as much. Okay. And you have a microphone on your lapel.
All right. So I got some word that not everybody knew about the star system or the asterisks. I want to make sure that nobody feels like they got skipped. I'm going to go down the line, and if you don't have a comment to make, just say no comment or pass, and we'll keep it moving. Does that make sense? All right. I just want to be fair. So I've got Karen Heilich. Okay. Doug Rue? Deborah Landry? Okay. Okay, I'll go back to stars. I'll go back to stars. Marty Kramer.
I've got a question about, excuse me, I'm Marty Kramer, I'm from North Yarmouth, and I have a question about Yarmouth's initiative. Yarmouth owns the dams. Yarmouth has been ahead of this. It seems to me to be a taking from North Yarmouth with very little consideration for your upstream neighbors. What happens, who mitigates? What if this doesn't work? What if we lose water? What if the dry hydrants are taken away from us? What if the Baston Park plans are come to naught because there's no water in the river that far up? Does Yarmouth acknowledge any obligation? And for the Army Corps of Engineers, did you consider a nature-like fish ladder at Elm Street? Did you consider using the side channel for a fish ladder that actually works? Did you consider building up the face of the dam to make a rapid that would actually facilitate fish passage? And if you're going to fool around with middle falls, you know, why not do that first and then see what happens?
So I will answer the questions that are addressed to the town of Yarmouth, because they really aren't able to be answered by this panel here. And what I wanted to say is that we are working with North Yarmouth. We have been in communication with the select board, and we just put on our agenda to have a resolution to have a joint committee, which has already been discussed with the North Yarmouth Select Board and Town Manager, on recreation and ecology of the Royal River, because we recognize that any decision that we make here does affect our neighbors. And we all use the river for recreation, and we all have to think about the ecological impacts of any decisions we make. Whether we go with a plan or not, this is a good thing for us to have anyway, and that's what we're planning to do. So we are going to work together with North Yarmouth, and we're going to solve problems as they come up.
So do these actually work?
You might have to talk loud in the room, but it'll be audible to the people online.
Okay,
and reported.
okay, okay. So one of the questions was, did we consider a natural fish passage, Fishaway, and I believe you're talking about through, sorry?
Elm Street.
At Elm Street through, is it Foundry
Channel?
Foundry Channel, is that what you mean? Foundry Channel? Yeah, we did consider that. Is one of our, can you answer that, Matthew, or is one of our engineers online? Is Mike online?
Yeah, hey, this is Mike Andriuk. I am online. If you guys can hear me, just give me the hi sign on the video. All right, awesome. Yeah, so we did consider the bypass at the Foundry, and the thing to keep in mind with that is that we need to have a certain amount of flow going through there to attract the fish, an attractive flow. And doing it at that location would require extensive cutting of the channel, basically making it much wider to have more flow going through, which would then cause us to have to basically replace the roadway bridge and pedestrian bridge at that location. And all of that would be for pretty much the same overall benefit as taking out the dam at East Elm Street. So we pretty early on figured out that that would be a very cost ineffective solution to basically get the same benefit.
And then there was a question the gentleman asked about building up the existing East Elm Street Dam to create a rapid. Do I have that right? Okay. We did not consider that. I don't believe we did. Mike, if I'm wrong, let me know. We did not consider building up the dam to create a new rapid.
No, we did not. I'm not particularly familiar with that technique, but it is not something we discussed.
Yeah, I don't believe that would be, I'm not sure exactly how that would encourage fish passage, but maybe I'm not imagining it right. So we did not consider that as a measure. Did we answer all your questions? Okay, thank you.
If we can transition online quickly, I know we've got some questions. I can't see the screen, so if we could go in the order of the first question received. You can just call out their name, maybe they're listening.
Kathy? Kathy, can you unmute yourself and ask a question?
All right, we can get back to that. We'll transition back to the room. I'm out of asterisks currently, out of stars. We'll transition to the gentleman in the back with his hand up with the green jacket. Thank you.
Please wait until we get the mic to you so people online can hear.
But online they can't. Rick Snow, I live on the Royal River. I abut Town Landing. Couple questions, but I'll be quick. I know every 10 years the Army Corps of Engineers have to come in and dredge to make the Royal River navigable, and because of all the sludge that builds up, and the marinas there have to make sure that that sludge is clean, so we know there's no contaminants that are downstream of those dams. Now, if you talk to the old timers, they used to go up and clean their coins and other things and the mercury in the rivers upstream of those dams. So we know that there's some contaminants upstream. They were there somehow. They're not downriver, so they're there somewhere. If Stantec found that mercury at one point, it's probably still there because it's not downriver. So if we remove those dams, that mercury is going to end up downriver, and we're going to end up without clamming, lobstering, mussels, any of the things downriver if there is mercury there. That's a very big if, and you're saying you're not aware of it there. I'd like to be certain that it's not there. I'm also concerned that I just got my property tax bill, and it's through the roof, like most of us. So $2 million is a lot to ask for something that it's a desire. It's not a need. We have lots of needs. I think we should be looking at needs, not wants, for this town right now, and that's my feeling.
So while I walk back up to the front, I just want to answer the last point about the taxes in town. We are looking, if we do go forward with this kind of proposal, at fundraising and grants, including some federal agencies that are able to participate, even though there's already federal participation at 65%. And we are not looking to make this a burden on our taxpayers.
What about dissemination?
That's their answer.
Do you want me to take it? All right. Sound coming through? Yes? Okay. So in regard to the contamination that was identified by Stantec, between the Stantec report and our work, there were dozens of samples collected, and there was one instance of mercury not particularly high. And so when you think about 10,000 yards of sediment coming down the river every year, that one location with a slightly above regulation mercury detection, it will dilute. It will dilute into the water, it will dilute in the sediment coming down the river, it will be diluted by the sediment that exists down in the estuary. And so what happens is by the time it gets down there, the concentration is so low as to potentially not be detected or to not be an environmental concern. And so that's a process that's occurring now. It has been occurring. It will continue to occur after this tentatively selected plan is implemented. I would also point out that that was immediately, I believe, downstream of the interstate bridge, right, which mercury is commonly found running off of busy roadways. So we believe we've identified the source of that as well.
And just to piggyback on what Matthew's saying here, it's not that we didn't find the mercury. Like it's not that we don't think that there's mercury down there. It's that we have assessed that the system is dynamic. Rivers are living things. They're constantly changing, constantly growing. And the Royal River specifically has a hard bottom, bedrock bottom, with sediment interspersed on top. While we were out doing the sediment surveys, we revisited the Stantec survey spots where they did find the mercury, and when we did that, we did not find mercury in the exact same location. So one of the things that we've come to realize about the system is that it does flush. It flushes regularly based on the large-scale storm events. And to speak to the amount of sediment that's going to be going down, we did have Stantec and our own crew do a calculation to determine how much sediment is built up behind both of the dams. And I believe, and I know that the exact number is in our draft report, but I believe the number between the two dams was 420 cubic yards of sediment, which is in the scale of about 4% of what is dredged every 10 years. So it's not a significant impact in amount or contamination from our survey.
So earlier when I asked for questions, we had one question, or one hand up in the back before some of the others I've seen since. We'll call on the gentleman in the vest with the plaid shirt.
Good evening, Mike LaBelle. I live on the estuary. More of a jurisdictional question. I think, you know, the questions have been posed about the potential for sediment drift. Let's assume that that occurs. There is some mercury, there is some heavy metals that come down as a result of the removal of the dam. Who tests the conclusion of that when those dams come out? Who's going to test for that, number one? And whose responsibility is to clean it up? Does that become the town's responsibility? Or do the feds come in and clean up that mess?
So the thing is, we don't believe there is a mess
I know
to
you
clean
don't
up.
believe there is. All I'm
'Cause
suggesting
we've-
is, does somebody test for it
We have?
after the dams are removed? Does someone come in and test to see what has come downstream? And then if there is heavy metals that do come downstream, whose responsibility is it to clean it up? Does that fall on the town of Yarmouth to clean that up? Or do the feds come in and say, okay, we released it, we'll come down and clean it up?
If I could try and answer at this one. So what I've been hearing when you did the presentation about the sediment study in the spring and also tonight is that it doesn't matter whether we have dams. This is a dynamic system. Whatever has been in the sediment before has already been to the harbor and will do that again and again. It doesn't matter if we have dams. So dam removal does not change the movement of contamination down the river. We are not finding buildup. When they went back and looked for sediment, they had trouble finding it. That's what they're saying, because the river scours the sediment and sends it downstream with dams. That's what we have now. So taking out the dams doesn't mean that new sediment that's there now is suddenly going downstream. It's been there. It's gone down. Who's going to
test that hypothesis after? I think that's what the gentleman said, after. It's good to have.
I'd like to address this now, but my understanding is that there's been contamination tested in the past. We've gone and tested it again without removing dams, and it's not there, which means it went somewhere. Where did it go? It went downstream.
So, Karen, this question is down the road after, if this is done, when it's done, is there somebody that's going to come back periodically to test? If it's tested and find that there's results in there that no one wants, responsibility.
What does the monitoring program look like after this?
So as part of the federal navigation program for the federal channel in the estuary, we do sample and test the sediment before we dredge to understand where and how we can dispose of that dredged material. So that's not going to change. That'll continue to happen by the Army Corps through that area. And I mean, yeah, it's a huge concern for the dredge material because there are only certain ways you can dispose of contaminated material, so it's something that is done regularly before any dredging. So that will continue to happen.
If I believe, going from last time, the next question that I had was from you, ma'am, in the blazer, and then it would be from the gentleman here in the vest with the gray shirt.
Hi, my name is Lindy, and I live on the river, just by the, you can't hear? Okay, sorry. Okay, my name is Lindy. I live on the river just above the East Elm Dam. My question also, I just want to reiterate, I have concerns about what the recourse would be if something is exposed. But also, my understanding is that there had been pole dipping at Sligo, and that there weren't any samples done in that general area on the river. And I had asked a couple months ago both the town and you guys for an answer on that, and I'm still waiting on that.
I can try my best to answer that one. Good question, Lindy. So I'm sorry we didn't get back to you. So she's referring to the CMP pole yard that's along Sligo Road. It's about 15 and a half acres. It's protected by a chain link fence. You might have driven by it next to the water district. Behind that, there's another 34 acres. So in between that parcel and the river itself is another 34 and a half acres that's town owned, and that's available for open space. And so after receiving the question, we did get in touch with the Maine Department of Environmental Protections, because they do regular monitoring of the Sligo Road site for sort of ongoing maintenance. The site's been remediated. It's in sort of in this maintenance process with Central Maine Power, and it's their opinion that there shouldn't be any leachate or any other concerns related to toxins into the river from that location. So that's as much as we've got for information, but we can continue to follow up. Yeah, CMP and the Department and DEP do. Yeah, on a regular basis. Yeah. I'm not sure if they did any water testing at the river, but it's on site, so it would be within the encapsulated site. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll just stand where I can see people and people can see me. My name's Gordon Clark. Excuse me. My name's Gordon Clark. I live at 161 East Elm Street with my wife Gail, adjacent to the East Elm Street Dam. So I'm that person, Janet, that we've talked before. Nice to see you. I have a couple of brief questions for you, Donnie, but before getting to those two brief questions, I have an even briefer question. Based on your based on your presentation, is alewife a word like deer where the plural is alewife and not alewives?
That's a great question, and it's used both ways. I've heard alewives. I've also seen in academic papers alewife used both singular and plural.
Okay, thank you. All right, so while removal of the dam on our side of the river is not part of the Army Corps' tentatively selected plan, if it was to be removed as part of a locally preferred plan in order to preserve the ecosystems of both the Royal River's North Branch and Gooch Island, might there be species of fish that would preferentially go up that side of the river? And what might be the increase in the number of alewife or alewives beyond your estimated 28,880 that would go upriver on that side of the river if the dam was removed?
Sure. So one of the large metrics that we look at for fish passage is something called attractive flow. It's been mentioned a couple times tonight without any real definition of what that means. So migratory fish are going to naturally be attracted to the area of the river that has the highest current that's passable to them. So if we remove the entire dam, what we'll see is several separate flows going down the face of that, the cascade right at the base of East Elm Street right now. And what you would actually see is just a lower level of flow along the peak channel over that cascade. So it's unlikely that you would see any significant number coming up around the other side of the dam and really even migrating around Gooch Island. Just because the flow rate is going to be so much lower over there, they're going to naturally think, well, that's still water, it's going to be an eddy, I don't want to be there, let me go this way instead. So I don't think it'll make a great deal of difference in numbers of passing alewife to remove the entire dam. And if anything, it may actually reduce the efficacy slightly. Not significantly, but slightly.
Next, we had the gentleman in the long sleeve blue shirt, I believe, had his hand up first.
Thank you. My name is Steve. I also live along the river, not too far from Gordy. During the H&H meeting, you talked, there's a velocity vector that showed kind of very similar to what Gordy's talking about, the velocity flow if the entirety of the East Elm Street Dam was removed. Actually, the velocity vector was increased around the Gooch Island direction. If the, you guys are estimating about 4 feet drop north of East Elm Street if the TSP, so only 120 feet are moved. If the entirety of it's moved, what do you expect the river level to drop upstream of the East Elm Street Dam, given the fact that if the entirety of it is removed, the velocity vector shifts from the center section of the dam right now to the northern section with all 240 feet removed? Thank you.
Yeah. So unfortunately, we don't have our modeler here today with us, so I'm sorry, I couldn't answer that because I don't have his entire presentation, but you could definitely, we'll have that as a comment so he can address it.
Thank you. The Stantec studies showed 5.6 feet. Is that similar to what you guys are putting in the report tomorrow? 5.6?
It's
give or take?
I believe it's 4 feet is what we've seen.
Well, that's the TSP.
Mm-hmm.
With the entire, if there was the entire removal, do you guys even talk about it in the report that we're going to see?
I'm sorry, I would not even want to try to adjust that. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I'll wait for you.
All right, so in the order of the hands that I saw up, it went the gentleman in the white checker shirt, the gentleman in the vest, and then the gentleman in the green vest.
Sorry.
The blue vest on this side, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. My name's Jacob Bordeaux. I'm a resident of Yarmouth with my wife. We've been here for about 7 years, southern Maine about 20. I'm also a civil environmental professional engineer with a master's degree, and I've studied this in depth. In 2 minutes is probably not enough really to go through. I could comment on half of the things here, especially that bypass channel. But what I'd like to say is that, you know, my wife and I both agree that the dam should be completely removed back to the natural state. I think that would be beneficial. Iteratively, if the fish don't come back, you could add things back in. Hopefully that doesn't occur. Also, I'd like to say that, you know, I think it's going to be a benefit for the alewives. It's going to be a benefit for Yarmouth. It's going to be a benefit for the fishermen in the area, which I am one. You know, you look at all the boats down in the harbor, 75% of them are sport fishing center consoles. So I think that gives credence to the you know, sport nature of this river. That said, I'm also a whitewater kayaker. I've been doing it for 30 years, and this is a gem right here. If these dams weren't here, people would be paddling these every day. The core study shows that basically the low flow, the 95% low flow, is still runnable for whitewater kayaking. That means that basically 345 days a year are acceptable for whitewater flow, and I think that should not be overlooked.
I'm sorry, who was next?
Thank you for your comment. It'll be the gentleman in the blue vest. That's you, sir, with the tan hat. Yes.
Mike or Tread, who wants it?
There's a lot of vests here. Everyone's defense.
My name's Tread McIntyre. I live in Yarmouth. I live next to Gordy and near Steve. I abut Gooch Island. Is it on? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. My house fronts the Gooch Island channel that goes around, and I just wanted to ask a question. I think at the outset, Ms. Coate, you referred to the fact that you didn't look at any operations and maintenance costs, and that we would save millions on that going forward. But if you only remove half of the dam, won't we still have operations and maintenance costs associated with that? And, you know, why wouldn't you look at that? My understanding is that the town has not spent anything in the last 5 years on operations and management of the dam. So that's my question.
Yeah, I'm sorry, maybe I misspoke. What I meant was that we were trying to remove the potential future operations, maintenance, replacement, and repair costs that would be required going forward. So yes, you're right. If we maintain that portion of the dam, there would still be a smaller amount of operation O&M replacement and repair costs. That's true. But by removing the Bridge Street Dam, removing the part of the East Elm Street Dam, you're definitely reducing future costs going forward.
Sorry, just a related question. Is there any, my name's Emily Bryson. I live on East Elm Street near all these other guys. Just a related question. Is there any associated cost with maintaining the structures that you're thinking of putting in at Middle Falls to divert the water?
No,
Like
no.
trees getting hung up or damage, anything like that?
No, we don't believe so, no.
All right, getting back in order, we have another gentleman with the blue vest, sir.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Before I start, because I know many of us have family and friends in Florida, my family and I will want to extend our well wishes and hope everyone will remain safe before and during Hurricane Milton. My name is Mike Ting. I live at 20 Island Park with my family. I've prepared a long statement. I can give you the short one, but I want to be respectful for everybody's time. So I will take a poll. If people want to hear the short comments, raise your hand. Good, perfect. And then we will skip the long comment. All right. So we've been told that the dam removal is needed for ecological returns and that the returns outweigh the financial cost of the project. What is this economical return? Ecological return, we saw that today. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers provided us with the data. If we spend $2 million and move forward with the tentatively selected plan number 2, we would get, quote unquote, 25,880 habitat units. Now, on that same slide, the U.S. Army Corps also provided us with data to once and for all put to bed the idea that taking down the dams will, quote unquote, restore the fish. If you look at Plan 3, which is on those slides, that's what Plan 3 is. Plan 3 is removal of both dams. And what happens when you remove both dams? You only get back 1,849 habitat units. You only gain 7% in ecological return by removing the dams. So what's the difference between removing the dams and tentatively selected plan number 2? It involves the combination of the Middle Falls. Okay, only by removing the Middle Falls with the combination of dam removal do you get a best buy rating. That's a tentatively selected plan number 2. Tentatively selected plan number 1 was also rated a best buy, which was to do nothing. So to my fellow residents who consider themselves to be conservationists or naturalists, I do truly empathize with your cause, but I urge you to consider one question. If the goal behind removing the dams is to remove the Royal River back to its natural state, why would you then allow a project which artificially diverts the river? And why would you allow that project to proceed? If your justification is that the man-made diversion at Middle Falls is necessary for the return of owlweed, then that is where my definition of conservation differs from yours. In my definition of conservation, the end never justify the means. Conservation should never compromise the very essence of nature itself. Do not chip away granite ledges that have been here for thousands of years. Do not artificially place large rocks in the river where they never belonged. Do not fool yourselves into thinking that the diversion is just a quote-unquote small project. If the cost to remove one of the dams is $2.18 million, and the cost of the bypass is estimated at $1.5 million, just how much ledge is being destroyed? Just how many large rocks are being placed in the river?
We're at 3:30, and that's quite a few questions.
Looking
sir.
at my price tag, I would guess a lot. My friends, Mother Nature does its best when we leave her alone and just get out of the way. On this philosophical argument, my family and I will stand our ground. We will not be granting the town, nor the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, an easement to use our property as a staging ground for the engineered artificial remodeling of the Royal River. I humbly apologize to you all, but you will need to redesign, rebudget, and repeat the cost analysis. Legally, as a direct abutter to the side channel,
We're at 4 minutes and 30
Good.
seconds, sir.
I own the riparian rights to the small, non-navigable channel that you guys want.
You have a meeting tomorrow as well?
Yep.
You're welcome at?
Yep. If Yarmouth and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers decide to unilaterally proceed with any plans at diversion of the Middle Falls, yeah, I have legal standing and I will challenge the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe you've been waiting for a while, sir. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting some hands pointing back. Ma'am, in the plaid, I believe it's your turn.
Hi, Rosalie Weigel, and I live on River Bend. And the question I had was the same O&M question that was already asked, so thank you for answering that. So I'm going to speak for Kathy at River Bend. Her question is, what effect on the mosquito population with the reduced level of the river?
So, well, can we just repeat it just to make sure we have it correct? What is the impact of the mosquito population?
Yes, so for some of us, the mosquito population it's pretty big. So the question is, if the water level goes down, how does that affect the mosquitoes? Does it get, I don't know, worse or better?
Sure, that's a great question. So obviously the mosquito population is a big concern, especially as we've heard more and more about the mosquito-borne illnesses, EEE and West Nile and all of that as it's going on. The one thing that mosquitoes really need to reproduce is stagnant water. So it needs to be still. Otherwise, their larvae will not survive. They'll be picked off, and they won't be able to reproduce successfully. What we are anticipating based on our H&H modeling is not going to increase the stationary stagnant water where they would need to reproduce. I don't believe it would have any noticeable impact on the already existing mosquito population, but we wouldn't be adding to it.
So I believe we have the gentleman in the green vest, and then we have you back here. So we'll go, sir, you first.
Thank you. My name is Bruce Hathaway, and I think this, first of all, walking around with the microphone is absolutely ridiculous, and we've wasted a lot of time, okay? I have lived in Yarmouth all my life. I was born in Yarmouth in Gilbert's nursing home, so I can give you people a little history. Now, a gentleman before said that the bait fish coming up the Royal River has gone down completely. Well, for people that don't know this, that on East Elm Street, there was a chicken processing plant called Gilbert's Nursing Home. Well, at 9 o'clock at night, there was a 9-inch pipe, and the guts and the feathers came out of that, and you want to know why we had so many bait fish up there? That's why, okay? And the smell checks down in the bay used to be on the front paper of the Pullman paper because there were so many smells coming up because there was all kinds of bait, okay? Now, my question is, we're talking about taking the dams down. I haven't heard much about fish ladders because, I mean, Damascotta has had great luck. Are they smarter than we are? And as far as the 2 fish ladders that we have, I can't remember what year they were installed, but it was the town's responsibility to keep those ladders clean. And I have been fishing that Royal River since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. And I don't remember anybody down there cleaning those, so how are the fish going to get up there? And that's it. Thank you.
So, one of the reasons we haven't really been talking about the fish ladders is because there were studies done on the efficacy of the fish ladders to see what kind of passage they were when they went in. I believe that they were installed in the late 70s, so in 74 and 78. So following that, the Maine Department of Marine Resources conducted a study for fish passage through the area. And what they found is they were seeing about a 70 to 80% passage across Bridge Street through their fish ladder. By the time they got to the bottom of East Elm Street, you saw a significant decline. And by the time they got to the top, there was almost nothing. It was to the point where between, I believe it was 1989 and 2009, they did the monitoring. The efficacy from the bottom of Bridge Street Dam to the top of East Elm Street ranged between 0 and 11% of that run every year. And in the early years, that was, we're talking about 50,000 alewife in the season migrating up there. So between 0% of 50,000 and 11%. And then that number continued to steadily decline as the years went on because not enough were proceeding above East Elm Street to continue to reproduce and refill that population, as well as, you know, offshore fishing pressure and all the other assorted environmental issues that were going on at the time. So one of the things that we did look at very extensively with the fish ladders was, is this a viable option moving forward, or will we get a better return for the time and money invested by removing the entire thing?
So we'll start back here, ma'am, with you.
Hi, my name's Deborah Delp. My family owns Yankee Marina. First, I want to respond to what the gentleman just said about that study where the alewives dropped so much. I believe in that study written by the DMR, a biologist, that what it was determined it was the Middle Falls. Isn't that correct?
That is correct, and that is what made us initially start looking at that as a passage protocol for the TSP.
Correct. So it wasn't actually the fish ladders, although they do have some deficits, but that was the issue. And to Mr. Kramer's point that maybe that needs to be evaluated before we take out East Elm Street Dam to make sure we can truly adjust Middle Falls if that's in fact what we should be doing. But the reason I wanted to speak was I just wanted to respectfully, as you spoke of testing, remind the Army Corps that we also test. We have 3 boatyards down there. Don't forget us. We are rarely mentioned. We test more often than you folks, and it's on our dime, of course. So that's just a gentle reminder. And lastly, a question, just to confirm, what I'm hearing is that with the removal of these dams, we will see no increase in sedimentation in our areas. That's what you're telling us, correct? That's what I'm hearing?
Yes, that's what we believe, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next question was from the gentleman in the yellow back here.
Hi, my name is Gib Parrish, and I live on the river too. I'm following up on this question about Middle Falls. And I guess my question is, historically, looking back in time to the extent that we can, are we sure that there was a significant anadromous run on the river prior to, for example, even the dams being there? In other words, you've said in your remarks earlier that Middle Falls is a barrier to fish passage. And I wonder if the Andromedus run is in fact was below Middle Falls. And you had an area where they were in fact spending their time down there and reproducing and then going back to the sea. So I guess that's my question. I'm a little puzzled by this, and I'm thinking Mike also, who talked about chipping away at a whole section of the Middle Falls backside as being necessary. And so that raises to me the question of, in fact, hasn't there been a natural barrier there for hundreds, if not thousands of years to the passage of fish?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a great question, but the fact of the matter is the Factory Island barrier is not a natural barrier. When we go out there to do when we went out there to do our investigations, I got to go out onto Factory Island and look down at it, and there's a perpendicular ledge running across the bottom of the Factory Island Cascade, and it drops about maybe 3 to 4 feet. So that's the barrier that we are really coming up against, and I mean, the island is named for the factory that was sitting on it. This was obviously, it was manipulated by man. Now, how we know that the anadromous run didn't just go up to there and stop is because alewife wouldn't reproduce in that habitat. They need to go further up the river into a lake. They'll also find little corners in the river and any little eddies or any kind of quiet areas of water and spawn out there, but to have a sustained run in order to support a commercial fishery, which we have evidence of going back into the 1800s, they would need to get upstream a lot further into a quiet body of water.
We've got time for about 2 to 3 more questions. I saw a lot of hands in the back of the room a few minutes ago, and I think we got some discouragement. I see no more hands going up. Sir, it was you in the red first, and then it's the gentleman with the Vietnam veteran hat.
Nelson Smith, North Yarmouth. My question is the dry hydrant on near Route 9. Is that still going to be a usable fire protection device? And so you don't envision the water level dropping much at all then?
Yeah, I believe that was something that Tom looked in our hydraulic and H&H engineer looked into very extensively, because obviously that's a serious concern for any of the public that relies on that in a case of an emergency. And what we saw based on the modeling is that it won't be impacted.
There's 3 more above it.
Mm.
All right. It was sir, and then ma'am, you in the green sweater after you, sir.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Bob Jarrett. I live in Yarmouth. I've been here 72 years. I don't quite understand your flow. A number of years, the dams have been dry. No water flowing over them. So how do you explain that the water levels on all of them are not going to drop much? In the summer, we don't have any water going over them. Where's the water coming from that's going to stay at a level that will take care of the kids using the river for training? The school uses the river for kayaking and canoeing. The only additional water that comes in to the Royal River is through a 6-foot culvert that comes out on the Route 1 bridge. That's where, because the town has to take care of drainage and everything else, excuse me, but it's just, I don't understand why a survey or a study hasn't been done on that side. What are you going to have for a water level?
So the information I presented today, and also in the meeting that was held in August, shows you at median flow. So that's the flow, that's the 120 CFS. That's what you would normally see. But yeah, the river level definitely changes. You have really low periods and very high periods. Our modeler actually modeled those different water levels as well. So that information will be in the report. We just couldn't show you the many different levels that he modeled at. So yeah, there will be times where it's going to be much lower because you're going to be, drought conditions or lower flows, and then you'll have much higher flows too. But we wanted to show you at the median what you most likely will see in the river.
We've still got time, so we can, another question here, ma'am.
No, for me? I don't know. Was there a question? Yeah. Hi, my name is Landis Hudson. I've lived in Yarmouth for I think about 30 years. I also work for a nonprofit, Maine Rivers. And you have lots of detailed questions, and I thank you all for coming here, and I'm sure you'll get more questions as we read the report. I just want to ask you a very big picture question about how you see the value of this potential restoration effort and how it fits within kind of a regional context. Why is it important to the Army Corps, and how can people in Yarmouth and North Yarmouth think about this and understand it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Definitely. Do you want to try it, or I'll start?
Go ahead.
Well, the Army Corps of Engineers, we focus on water resource projects. One of our business lines is ecosystem restoration. So this is an important element to the work we do. You know, a lot of people think about the locks and dams that we build or that we dredge, harbors, we do large projects, but also the ecosystem restoration is really near and dear to our hearts as well. So for us to be able to restore fish passage that did exist and bring it back to the river, it means a lot to us. I probably enjoy this more than any of the other projects that I work on, because I feel like we could see the results very quickly and see the benefits to the river and to the communities surrounding it. So for me, it's personal. I just love ecosystem restoration.
Yeah, and as far as kind of gauging the benefit, one of the things that we've touched on today is the cost effectiveness. And in order to determine that, we need a marker for success, something kind of tangible that we can put that dollar amount on, which is why we have this heavy emphasis on the alewife, because that is a tangible number of fish that have an economic value beyond just the ecosystem value and beyond the recreational value. That when it all comes together, we can account for it, but it's, you know, it kind of applies across the board for several different aspects of the health and life of the system.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got 7:56. I will take one more question. This gentleman up here in the front is who I'm being indicated.
My name's Phil. I live on East Elm Street also. Did you mention that if the entire East Elm Street Dam is removed, it could potentially impede fish passage slightly versus only removing half of the dam?
I wouldn't say that it would impede the fish passage slightly. I would say that it would be slightly less successful.
Okay, may produce lower numbers.
Yeah.
So if the town decides to go with a locally preferred plan, which involves removing the remainder of the dam, in addition to the tentatively selected plan, would the Army Corps of Engineers still support that plan, even though it takes away fish numbers and changes your dollars per fish calculations?
If the town wishes to support that, it would be considered a locally preferred plan. There is an avenue in the Corps of Engineers to be able to support the town if they choose to go forward with a locally preferred plan.
Even if it impedes your, or negatively impacts your cost analysis?
I don't believe
your
that the
portion of the
reduction in passage would be significant enough to drop the priority of the alternative.